It may be January, but Vopley already is a hive of activity. So we kick off this year with a sit-down interview with our brand new CEO, Rebecca Dalley. What a way to start 2024. Welcome to In the Loop. Hello folks and welcome to Vopley here at the Watercress Line. Happy New Year to you all. Now behind me we have our steam train lifting our famous little tank engines boiler onto its new ash pan, and all of that will then be going into the frames. Then later on Canadian Pacific's boiler will be out to be turned to make Jamie's life a little bit more accessible so they can continue the overhaul of the boiler. Now it's the start of the year, so understandably the guys here have been on their Christmas break. So we're going to start this year with a quick fire look at our calendar to see what you can look forward to in 2024. A lot to look forward to, and I tell you, I am excited as well. Now, onto the main part of the story today. We have a new CEO. As of a few weeks ago, on the 1st of January, Rebecca Dalley was named our permanent CEO of the Watercress Line. So we thought this was an ideal opportunity to have a sit-down chat about her first impressions of the railway and what we have planned for the future. So Rebecca, thanks so much for chatting to us. So to give our viewers a little background to yourself, you came from a Shuttleworth collection and became our interim CEO for a few months, keeping the railway ticking over, and then at the start of this year became our permanent, so congratulations, delighted that you're staying on. So what was it like transitioning from kind of the world of aviation? Because I imagine you've got a similar sort of clientele, a mix of enthusiasts and families who just want an experience day. What was that like for transitioning to here?
Well, the Shuttleworth Trust is a big organisation, and so it was more similar than you would expect because it's a regulated environment, which the railway is, but it's regulated by the Office of Road and Rail. You're absolutely right about there are lots of really passionate enthusiasts, so you know they're a very familiar set of excited people who are always going to take a really close interest. And also it was a very big estate with lots of historic buildings, and ironically, of course, that's actually what a railway is as well.
Very good point.
Because we've got lovely historic buildings like this.
So what were your first impressions of the Watercress Line coming here?
Well, I have to confess to you, Will, that the very first time I ever went behind a steam train was coming down to see the Watercress Line before I took the job.
You've been missing out.
Well, so it transpires. And I absolutely loved the friendliness. Everybody I met was just delightful. It was a very early in the year. It was in March last year, and it was a really fun day out. We really enjoyed it, and I'd come from quite a long way away, so we really felt that we had a lovely time. Absolutely loved the locos. Really enjoyed riding behind the steam train. Gorgeous views, lovely people. I had a really good day out. So that was really my first impression.
So I suppose one question would be, this was your first steam experience, why did you not know about the Watercress Line?
Well, it's a really interesting one because I think the watercress line is got so many great things about it. But one of the things is it doesn't really tell you where it is. And someone made the brilliant point the other day that Hants is, we are known as the Mid-Hants Railway. And Hants is a word that you used to write on a postcard in order to save yourself writing out Hampshire. So even people whose geography was good enough to find Hampshire might not even know what Hants is anymore. So Mid-Hants Railway is just not something that and the next generation is really going to understand. And when you start to think about the fact that our line goes past the absolutely gorgeous South Downs, then that starts to make me think, oh, I know where that is. Otherwise you're just zooming down the M4 to the coast. So one of the things that I think is really important for us is to try and help people to understand where are we in terms of the geographical location, because that then helps people to understand what else can I do while I'm here. So rather than just make a day trip, make a weekend of it, and that then helps our whole economy in the local area as well. The other thing that I absolutely didn't know anything about when I first started was the fact that because I'm not a loco person, I couldn't tell the difference between an old and a new steam engine, or an old and a newer steam engine, because none of them are new. So the fact that I had to be told that we are a post-war representation of steam heritage, the last generation of steam, the first generation of diesel, is what we excel at here on this line. And that's just made me think, well, I wonder if a lot of the family audience who come here also don't know that. If you're not coming with Grandad, who used to, be an aficionado of steam trains, then you wouldn't necessarily know that. But it's not that you don't want to know, it's just you have to be told. So I think that's one of the other things that in terms of our identity we really need to push, is that we're here to really represent that last generation of steam and that sort of post-war 40s to 60s, the end of the steam era. And that gives us the opportunity to really push our fabulous big locos as well.
I suppose that leads us on to a really good point. About 40 years ago or so, when heritage railways were really kicking into action, the main clientele and the main visitor were enthusiasts wanting to relive the bygone age. But that's changing quite rapidly. So what can we do to better meet the needs of your everyday visitor, the people who aren't kind of like me, the die-hard train fans?
Well, that's the thing. We're very reliant on a really broad range of people to come to our lovely railway. And the watercress line does a lot of that really, really well already, because as well as having our ordinary running days, we also have a lot of different things that appeal to different people, everything from a Thomas's Day Out all the way through to the countryman dining for a lovely lunch on a train. But what we've recognised is that there's a lot of people who are not that familiar with timetables anymore. Even if you are a regular train user, which fewer people are these days, then it's all on an app on your phone, and you just dial it up and you jump on the, get to the station, and there you go. It's laid out for you. So just issuing a timetable makes it quite confusing. Which station do I start at? How does it all work? People do need to understand there's more than just a train ride here as well, because we've got the fantastic facilities at Ropley, we've got all the lovely things at Medstead, this lovely little interlude in the middle of our line, as well as all the great destination here at Alresford. So what we've really feel strongly is that we need to make it a little bit easier for people to understand how to make the most of their day out, because they're not familiar with any kind of railway, let alone steam railway, and they need to be helped to understand, turn up here for this time and here are the things that you can do. So we're really going to be changing not actually how we run, but how we help people to understand how to make the most of their day on our trains. Curating a daily excursion rather than just offering up standard travel. So it's much, much easier for people to use, because expectations have been rising all the time and in our audience base, and we need to keep abreast of that.
I suppose people, they don't look now and say, we're going to go to the railway because the railway's there. It's, we're going to have a day out in Hampshire. What have we got to do? And you need to be able to fill that day out, give people a lot of value for money. I suppose, the last thing we want people to do is take a trip here from Alresford up to Alton and back, go, well, that was it, that was nice.
And they'd be missing out on so much if they did that, because the amazing facilities we have up on our engineering, which is just an absolute joy to see. You know, if anyone wants a spanner bigger than this table, you know, which is just so much fun. And just to, you know, regular visitors coming back to see the progress on our engineering projects, which we know is of great interest to people who are interested in engineering. And you don't have to be a specialist to appreciate just how incredible that is. And then the stations that we've got here, which are just like walking back in time, and the amazing volunteers that put in all the time to our what we call our site care, so all the planting. I mean, I was blown away when I first started here that I came in March and it looked absolutely lovely, and I thought, well, that's great, but it's not going to look great in August. It was still looking great in August. The planting is fantastic, and the century-old topiary at Ropley, it's all so beautifully thought through, and it's all done by volunteers just picking up a spade and, you know, turning over the soil and making sure that all the weeds are gone. I mean, it's just incredible.
I suppose that's actually a really good point. When people think of working volunteers, they think of people they can see, they're station masters, signalmen, drivers, guards, but there's actually so many roles behind the scenes which anyone can do, which really go into making the overall experience of the railway.
There are, and there's a lot of very expert roles, as well as those who are coming in from the sort of the bottom that anybody can do. So a lot of people don't realise that everything that we do is really delivered by volunteers. So when you're getting on the Countryman lunch train or the Real Ale train, that is all volunteers delivering all of that service. But then we've got a huge amount of really expert people helping us out as well. So then a huge number of volunteers in our very extensive engineering, which, you know, we are really lucky to have the experience of a generation who have spent an entire career working in heavy engineering, passing on their skills to our younger staff and helping them to transfer those skills into a new generation before the heavy engineering that they represent completely moves on. But also we've got the behind the scenes stuff that you absolutely don't see in operations, the massive amount of activity that goes on that I had no idea when I first started this role about signalling. You know, we've just put in a new big project at our Medstead site, and I've really got to know a little bit more about that and been blown away by the huge number of very, very expert volunteers who've come to give their time to that project. But also in terms of the way that is then translated onto a day-to-day. So you've got the drama of the token exchange, which you know, the people who know about railways will know what I'm talking about. The people who don't won't have a clue what I'm talking about. But you know, there's this incredible drama where somebody has to catch a token as the train is coming into the station to allow them onto the next part of the track. And if you're not looking in the right place as a non-specialist, you miss all of that, and it's really part of the experience. You know, from our beautiful period stations, you need to see the beautiful period activity as well. And then there's a huge amount of work that goes behind the scenes in timetabling and making sure that the whole railway is safe, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And then last but not least, 10 miles of track. You know, that's a lot of sleepers, that's a lot of track. There's a lot of fences. So all of that has its own team that goes up and down the line, making sure it's completely safe before the trains run and making sure it's in good condition. So it's an enormous volunteer resource, and it's also an enormous amount of expense to support those volunteers as well, with all the kit and equipment and services that they need. So it's absolutely awe-inspiring what goes on here at the railway.
It's brilliant. It's a great family to be a part of as well. So we've looked at kind of celebrating ourselves, but let's get down into the nitty-gritty. Based on your experience from the Shuttleworth and previous roles, the railway doesn't pay for itself as such. We need people to run it, but we also need people to come here and attend. Do you reckon there's a market we are potentially missing?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I think one of the things that the Watercress Line does very well is hit particular markets. So we talked a little bit about the Thomas events, you know, for the littlies, and you've got some lovely dining events for people who don't want to race around too much. I think one of the markets that I felt that we could improve upon was the older children, because the steam galas that we have are great for enthusiasts, but we don't quite hit that late teenage stage at the moment. with everything, unless they're with somebody who can help them to get really enthusiastic about the railway. So one of the things we will be doing is converting one of our existing carriages that's not in use and couldn't really be made into running use in any meaningful time. And we're going to convert that into an escape room that's accessible from the platform, that allows people to have a really fun, hour or two doing all the clues, and we'll update it on a regular basis, because you clearly love escape rooms.
How exciting.
I love escape rooms.
Do you need anyone to test it?
I think we'll need lots of help with that, Will. And I'm really pleased that there's been a really great reaction from particularly many of our younger volunteers, of which we have so many. It's so gratifying to see how many younger volunteers we have here. But that escape room, I think we're going to have possibly more fun putting it together than anybody has in actually participating.
I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be
So
good.
yeah, that will be really great. And the fact that we can put it in a carriage straight off the platform, the fact that we can have something that brings people to the railway all year round, and then you can integrate it with a go on the train. And everybody who's done an escape room with Gran knows that they'll always whip Gran in an escape room, which is always satisfying. So I think that will be super fun, and and something that will just help us to attract that little piece of the market that might just not get it until we've had that opportunity to tell the stories in a different way. So we'll still link it to some of the great heritage of our railway, but it just allows us to do it in a really fun way.
That'll be a brilliant setting.
Yeah, it'll be so fun.
That sounds brilliant. So on the line of learning more about the railway, do you reckon we can do more on the interpretation side of things, show people actually what they're looking at, why it's important?
I think that's really important, because the Watercress line, one of the other mysteries for me when I first started coming here was understanding what's all the watercress about, not knowing the area because I don't come from Hampshire. So discovering that great heritage of bringing watercress into London and the social impact that had, never mind the fact that it was generating the business for the railway, is really, really important. So we do have aspirations to make that clearer for our audience. And then we also have aspirations to take a lot more of our learning that is delivered up at Ropley. So we have an education learning officer, Dan, who just does a fantastic job. And at the moment, we do a lot of activity that is generated around the key stages that come through the young schools, and there's lots of lovely evacuation school visits, which is just a joy to watch, because the chatter of those children when they see the steam train coming in and they're all dressed up in their little gas masks and their little flat caps, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful.
From the footplate point of view, it's great because the platform just lights up when you come in, everyone's waving. It's great.
And you can hear it. It's in their voices. It's more excited than I ever heard in any museum. It's fabulous. But then we're also very keen to extend that out into a little bit more of our science and technology learning as well, because clearly we are a highly proficient engineering resource here. And I love the fact that it's all mechanical engineering. So, my brain really stops at the end of mechanical engineering. And therefore, I appreciate those youngsters who would be really engaged by that, because it's a great gateway. You can see stuff move, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can hear it. And the principles are very accessible. So we're looking at really upping our game in that STEM learning environment and bringing people not just onto the trains when they're running, but actually using our facilities all year round and all the way through the week, even when the trains aren't running. Because actually, part of the fun from my perspective is standing next to a massive loco where the wheels are up here. That's as awe-inspiring as watching one actually in steam in many respects, especially if you've never been to the railway before. And that then can encourage people to come back with their families when they want to see them in steam. So we've got really great plans to expand that programme.
Definitely, especially the point about large engines. Brilliant, heavy engineering. And I suppose we're dealing with quite Victorian technology. It's an old cliche. But now in the modern age, that's not as easy. So potentially a hard question, how can we as a railway that burns coal contribute towards net zero?
I think that's a really, really key question, because the next generation are going to be asking that of us constantly. So one of the things that I've come in to discover is that we haven't really ever measured what we do. And so that's the absolute first piece, is to say, what is it? Because we do know that we burn coal, and some of our locos are never going to do anything else, and some of them, we might be able to look at other technologies. But at the end of the day, there's also the irony that may not be our biggest source of carbon emissions. It's clearly the most visible, but is it the largest? And so measurement, actually knowing what our baseline is absolutely critical to start off with. So it may not be that our locos are the things that are burning the most carbon in our environment. We just need to make sure that we're absolutely clear about where that carbon footprint is sitting on our railway. We need to reduce and eliminate all of our single-use plastics. We need to make sure that there are places for people's electric cars to be plugged in, and people can access us in a really sustainable way, whether it's bikes or taking the train from London. Those are really, really huge contributors to reducing our carbon footprint. But also, I would say that we are the ultimate recyclers. We are recycling, 50 and 100-year locomotives and carriages for people's enjoyment. So, we're not building a roller coaster that's taken a massive carbon footprint to produce to begin with. We are creating something from an existing resource. And so, I think that's a really good support.
That's a very good point, actually. I never thought of it that way. I suppose that leads on quite nicely. Every time we see an engine overhaul, figures with lots of zeros get bandied around about how much it's going to cost. So an obvious question would be, what can we do about fundraising?
Oh, well, that is a very, very good question. So we've got projects like our fabulous project Canadian Pacific, which is a huge, huge loco, which has been on the cards for a very long time. We're still just trying to unplug some of the challenges of the fact that the bits of the loco got distributed around the country, and we're just trying to repatriate them at the moment. But it's a classic example where, yes, we've put some new materials into that, but what's really expensive is the expertise and time and that has to go into that locomotive. So locomotives are just a tiny part of what we do, because, as I mentioned, we've got track, the permanent way, which is not just fences and track. It's trees around, suffering from ash dieback that we have to manage, and make sure that the good old leaves do not go on the line. That's all really important. That all costs an enormous amount of money. We have to keep the lights on. We have to pay literally the gas bill, because we've got fabulous gas lights here in Alresford, which are just absolutely remarkable when you come here. I can't believe it.
At night time, it is amazing to look at. But yes, actually, gas bill. That's a very good point. I never thought of. So the upkeep of these century-old buildings, all of these things do cost an enormous amount of money. And what we're really doing is we need to count on our friends and family to support us. So we are launching a big fundraising campaign called We're Counting on You, and we'll be helping people to understand just what it takes to run the railway in terms of numbers, and then we'll be giving them opportunities either to invest in the projects that are really meaningful to them if they're familiar with our locomotives, but also to participate in all kinds of challenge events. So that might be walking events, running events, challenging your mate to do a thing in order to get to raise some sponsorship money, because not everybody knows the individual parts of the Watercress line. But what I found is that there's a huge number of people out there who are really, really positive about what we do, about the amazing social value that we give in terms of the volunteering that we have, the amazing economic value that we produce for our local area, and just for the amazing day out that we give to families as an opportunity. So, we are counting on our friends and family to keep us going, because it is a really challenging environment for bringing people to the railway. And just get your family, make sure all your families and friends know that there's something for them here at the Watercress line, whether it's a really long-standing product like the Real L train, or whether it's something new that we're producing like the escape rooms. There's an opportunity to bring people along, even if you've been to the railway before. Bring somebody new. So yeah, we're counting on you. We're counting on everybody to really help us out. It is important, because the entire railway industry
not only on the main line but in heritage rail, are finding the same challenges. So we're not unique, but what we've got here is something that's absolutely special. We are, the experts in that last generation of steam. We're putting big locos up on a big hill, which is expensive, but it's also really fun. And that's what I've discovered. Having never been on a steam train a year ago, I've now totally fallen in love with giant engines and pushing them up big hills. And, I think everybody who's here at the Watercress Line recognises that.
I suppose looking ahead, your previous role as interim CEO was more about keeping the railway ticking over, but now you're in your permanent role, you can look ahead. However, you have only been there for, it's about 3 weeks now, so it's probably harsh to ask what your 10-year plan is day by day, but can you give us a flavour, a broad sense of what your long-term plan is for the railway?
You're very right that one of the things about being an interim is I wasn't trying to look too far ahead, because as an interim you're expecting somebody else to come in. Obviously I stole that job for myself because it was just too much fun. But I think that one of the things that I'm very keen to do over the next year is to plug the gaps in some of the things that we don't know enough about. I mentioned the fact that we haven't measured our carbon footprint, but there's lots of other things that we haven't traditionally measured on the railway. So we need to come from a sort of basis of some really good information about our visitors, about the cost that the things that are around us, and the sorts of things that are going to engage people. I am really, really committed to getting Canadian Pacific finished. It's a project that I've fallen in love with. It's hugely challenging. We still have a fundraising gap. But I also find it's a really great opportunity to bring people new people to the railway who may not have met us before, and start to enthuse them about what we do, because there's nothing bigger than the Merchant Navy, really. When that comes on the line, it's just going to be so exciting. But beyond that, I'm really starting to think in that longer term. So I'm not going to give you any ideas yet, because I'm still thinking that one through. Obviously, you come into an organisation, particularly when it's an industry that's new to you, and making too many very snap decisions can be hostage to fortune. And we really need to find out what our wider environment is going to do as well. So we've made some nice little short-term things around making it nice and easy for our audience. We really, looking at the business, polishing up our business, making it really, really work well, which, over the next 12 to 18 months, we should see that working really, really well for us. We just need to get the fundraising going, and then we'll be able to come clean on the long-term thinking.
Brilliant. Rebecca, thank you so much for chatting to us today. We'll definitely have to do a catch-up another time.
I think so.
But thank you so much for watching, guys. That's it for this week, and, well, we'll see you next time.